How did you meet Anne? You were there with a close friend of ours.
Thank you for bringing this story up. Why not have it on recorded video?
So it was a friend's wedding. You were there with another.
It was a friend's wedding. We were up there with a large crowd from Toronto. We had our own table. They had set us entire Toronto crew aside at a table, very close to the exit, very far away from all the wedding proceedings. How fucking thoughtful. Glad I made the distance. And me and a friend who were there as single men met a couple of girls. One of my friends hit it off really well with one of these girls. And he was in a very similar circumstance I was in leaving Toronto. And he thought he'd found what I thought I'd found. Only problem was it was with the same girl.
How did he feel about it?
Not too fucking good. Especially not when she chose to spend the night in the hotel with me instead of going back to the house with him. I've been working a job I wasn't too happy with. Working 70 hours a week round the clock sort of left me without much of a life.
What'd you do?
Cook. I worked most of the sections in the kitchen. And being probably too useful for my own good, they never let me leave. So, you know, there are 70 hours a week, sometimes 16, 18 hours in a day. Doesn't leave you with much of a life, you know. It's hard to get out there to meet anybody. The girls I'd been dating before seeing her was sort of the equivalent of drinking watered down beer, and then I met her and somebody giving me cocaine. You know, I came back to Toronto and kept cooking away, doing my 70 hours a week and slaving away. Looking forward to the next time I'd see this girl again. And texting back and forth, been out to see her, talking about the next time we're going to meet up, which happened to coincide on a friend of mine in Ottawa's 30th birthday. Never met me. It was one excuse after another of what she was doing and why she couldn't meet up with me, until eventually she just sort of sprang the reality of the situation on me that she didn't want to pursue what we were doing any further. Well, the guy after that weekend, within the first week after that weekend, was sitting in St. Michael's getting 5 stitches put into his head for a bitter, violent altercation with bouncers after far too much to drink.
So drinking heavily?
Very heavily, 6-7 nights a week.
And working?
And working.
How do you feel about life then?
Not too optimistic anymore. Far from it. If I was cynical before, I don't know what I was after. It was close to nihilism and pure self-destruction. I started seeing this new girl. She was someone I worked with. She was the pastry cook in the restaurant I was in. So we struck it up over a conversation in a coffee shop. And coffee shop led to drinks and dinner led to more drinks, and she ended up back at my place. Throughout the early months of the relationship, harbored really ill feelings towards the world and towards relationships in general. And we started things up on such a casual footing that she was in a bad place, I was in a bad place. I had absolutely no intention of forming any form of relationship. And according to her needs, neither did she. Very quickly into it, though, I believe she began to change her tune, and I still wanted absolutely no more than the casual nature of things as they were. And because of the comfortable nature between us, I had no trouble telling her how I honestly felt about things, which might not have been the smartest thing to do, I suppose. I was very forthcoming in telling her that I saw no future, wanted no future, and that she probably wasn't right for me at all, and probably couldn't hold a candle to the person I was with before. I don't realistically know what the fuck I was thinking when I let those things come out of my
So
mouth.
you had no intention for a continuous relationship?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yes, how long did it last?
Continuously for a year and a half.
That's a long time.
Well, as the relationship progressed, I began to come over a lot of the shit I'd been dealing with. Unfortunately, for my sake, the more I came over my shit, and the more we came together, the more I realized I'd done a lot of damage to the relationship in the first couple months. And it never really repaired itself from where it was.
It would just keep coming up.
It would repetitively come up. In fact, it was every argument, every fight we would have, it would come up at least once or twice. And for a long period throughout that relationship, it was non-stop fighting. So I would hear that several times a day, several fights a day. I wanted to give it a chance. I didn't want to have this person who wanted to be with me and be the person who wasn't willing to give that a chance. And I suppose maybe in part because the last relationship I had been in, I wanted to be with her, I suppose, more than she wanted to be with me. And she was the one very willing to pull the plug very quickly. And whereas maybe if she had given it a chance, maybe we could have worked something out. So I suppose there was always that feeling in the back of my head that I didn't want to be the person who the other person was to me before. I didn't want to be the person to let someone down like that and to make them feel how I had ended up feeling for those many months before. I certainly became attached to her, and I certainly did have sincere feelings for her. Not as quickly as she'd gained them for me, but throughout time and the building of a relationship, yes, I did. And it certainly came at a cost, and the cost was mostly to me. Most of my personality, really. But most of the defining qualities that I've had come to love about myself. Things that, in the right frame of mind, I never would have sacrificed for anyone to begin with. But just out of the nature of the debilitating emotional connection between us, and the constant fighting, and wanting to be with her at the same time, and knowing the only way to do that would be to sacrifice elements of myself. And she struggled a lot with the fact that I like to travel, I like to explore, and I'm a very adventurous person. I like to hop a bus out of town for a weekend. I like to fly overseas for several months at a time. And these were never anything she was terribly interested in doing herself. Things that if the relationship were to continue, I would do on my own. But on the flip side, she was always so paranoid and so jealous that if I were to do them on my own, well, I'd never hear the fucking end of it. I kept going on account of I figured at some point there'd have to be a happy medium. At some point at the end of all my personal sacrificing, that she would have to sacrifice something as well, and maybe I could then regain some of what I had been sacrificing. It never happened that way. Well, eventually we came back to fighting almost daily. We tried to go out and do things, but we could never agree what to do on, and I'd suggest things endlessly, and she wouldn't want any part of any of it, but she'd never really suggest anything, so we'd end up doing nothing but sitting around fighting over it. The last few days, she'd gone out with some co-workers, and I was in night school, and I was working during the day, and the following day, I mean, I'd started a new job, I was still relatively new to it, I was trying to make a good impression. The following day, I had a very big day. I had to be up very early in the morning, and I had to be at night school after it, and I was looking at like a 14-hour day, and all I really wanted at that point, I'd been stretched so thin over the last couple months that I really just needed a good night's sleep. So I asked her, fine, you want to go out with your colleagues, have some drinks, fine, but please be home at a reasonable hour. And it had hit the point where it was 11:30 at night, she still wasn't home, she was still out drinking. Hours progressed. It was 1 in the morning, and I was pretty much pleading with her at this point to come home, and I was starting to lose my temper with the situation. And eventually, when she showed up around 2:30 or 3, I had lost my shit entirely. I was furious. I was upset. I felt sort of, really let down because, you're sort of counting on a person to try and take your interests to heart as well. They're not doing it. And she came home belligerently drunk, and we got into a big fight. And I went to work and did my thing the next day. And she was quite upset with my losing my temper over it, that she went to her mother's for the weekend. So I didn't see her for a couple of days. When I came home, after she was supposed to come back, she moved all her shit out. Under the guise that she was moving home to help her aging mother around the house a little more frequently. And then we met up a day or two after that, and she split it off with me. Wasn't happy anymore. Wanted to move on. I started traveling again. I reconnected with old friends. I started to remember who I was. For better or worse, perhaps, but I regained some footing as to who I am and the things I really enjoy in life. At first, I took a quick jaunt down to New York, and I reconnected with some Australian girls I knew who were traveling around the States. And we traveled again together. We went down to Tennessee for the Bonnaroo Music Festival and spent a hardcore weekend of very serious, very good music, libations as far as the eye could see, drugs and alcohol, sex and rock and roll. I mean, it was fantastic. It brought my headspace back to a pleasant place, a good place, good times, happy days.
Where are you going in November?
Brazil. 2.5 weeks. Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, and Manaus.
You got a friend in Sao Paulo?
Friend in Sao Paulo, an ex-dishwasher I used to work with who got deported because he couldn't sort out his visa. It was actually quite sad because he was a really good guy, and I was really sorry to see him go. Now that I'm going to Sao Paulo, I'm glad we got rid of the dirty bastard. Or I'd be alone in Sao Paulo with no Portuguese or any concept of alone to my own devices. When I was with Anne, I never had to sacrifice any of myself. And perhaps it's just because that relationship never made it to that level, I couldn't tell you. But I never sacrificed so much a shred of myself to be with her. Whereas in the next relationship, I had sacrificed almost everything I care about myself. Every distinctive feature that is me, I had given up to continue that relationship. So after the initial despair of losing that relationship, to recome and to become myself again, and to remember all the things I like about myself, and to be able to go out and do them again, and to become myself once again, was almost more liberating than anything else. And then to be able to reclaim that part of myself came to have a lot more meaning afterwards.
My baby told me, darling, if you can't get a pardon, better get a parole. I told her I'll be out by the morning when the sun is down,